Hey guys, my name is Ryan.
And I am Misko.
And welcome to Overwatch Central. So we are back from Gamescom. There is a lot to talk about in terms of the Season 2 and the Eichenfeld map. We will do that some other time. Right now we really want to talk about the recent changes that came out on the PTR. Starting with a general one which kind of affects a lot of heroes at once. It's basically the ultimates that consume the ultimate meter when activated will now drain more quickly. So this means that when you ult as a Genji and you get stunned instantly, you still have about 70-80% ult charge left because it wasn't used up properly. This means it's going to be a lot more unforgiving, so that means that stuns like Roadhog and McCree and Ana will be a lot more effective against the likes of Reaper, Genji, and so on and so forth. But we have so much to get through and to let you know our thoughts, so we're going to go straight into the next one, which is Genji.
Right, so as for Genji, we have quite a few changes, so let's go through them all. The double jump no longer resets when wall climbing. This means no triple jump, essentially. The dash or swift strike no longer deals damage to traps like Widowmaker's Venomine or Junkrat's Steel Traps, so this means that you can't really bypass them by just dashing through them or destroying them by randomly dashing through them or stuff like that. Swift strike like the actual strike will no longer interrupt the quick melee attack either, like the sort of animations. You can do the quick combo burst, you can't do that anymore. And Dragon Blade duration has been reduced from 8 to 6 seconds. Now, as for the last one, just to begin with that one, this means that Genji has an even shorter sort of window to actually, do everything that he's planned, get the pickoffs that he wants, and so on. And it also means that Zenyatta can protect his team from a Genji ult much better. So overall, this is pretty big changes and definitely a nerf to Genji, but it's not the nerf that just makes him unplayable. Definitely not. It just makes the game just punishes you harder for your mistakes, essentially.
Next up is Zenyatta, who has had a little bit of a buff and a little bit of a nerf. His Orb of Discord, the damage amplification that it does on the target, has been decreased to 30% from 50, meaning that it doesn't do as much damage universally. But it does put more power into Zenyatta's hands because the Orb of Destruction, his main firing weapon, has had its damage increased to 46 instead of 40. Now this is a very tit-for-tat change. McCree had something similar a couple of weeks ago with his primary fire being nerfed in regards to its fall-off and his right click being buffed because of it. Whether we see him not as strongly in the meta, especially in the pro scene, is another question entirely. We will do a what's the meta once we know a little bit more about where these heroes stand in regards to where they place, so do look out for that within the next week or so. But this should be a really good quality of life change for Zenyatta. He hasn't been taking up the game completely, but it will be interesting to see how he fares in ranked and so on.
On to Hanzo, who will now experience a 30% decrease in speed while aiming. This was formerly 40%. And the maximum projectile speed, so for the arrows, has been increased by 30%. Also not really a change to Hanzo in itself, but this was also in the patch notes. Reverted a recent change to reduce size of heroes' projectiles. Now, all this really just means that Hanzo's arrows are actually just a little bit more reliable overall. And you can really feel the change when you play as well. It's very interesting, and maybe we'll actually see Hanzo play just a little bit more now. Maybe people will stop going from the, oh, Hanzo's so inconsistent and bad, to the, well, actually, situationally, he can be strong. We already see him a little bit now and then in competitive play, like esports sort of level. And maybe this will be enough to just bump him up a little bit, but it's not a sort of, oh, Hanzo's gonna be a monster in the upcoming patch.
Now the rest of these changes are sort of more quick-fire ones, but they do mean a lot to these heroes. We're going to start with Mei and the buff she had to Blizzard. The radiuses have been increased to 10 meters from 8, and the Blizzard projectile now pierces barriers. What this means is that Snowball can be thrown through an enemy Reinhardt's shield, a Winston barrier, so on and so forth. So it's really good at getting behind them and stopping them in their tracks, as opposed to trying to gauge where they're going to be. You can put it behind them so they have no escape. So expect this to be a nuisance to deal with against really good Mei players as they try and catch you out. But this is a nice change. I think we're going to talk about Mei more in the future, but this is a good start for her as a character.
And now about McCree, it's just about the ultimate, the Deadeye, which now drains over a 0.25 second period instead of displaying a 50% reduction on the ultimate meter when activated and 0% when confirmed. So this is quite a sort of big change, I guess you could say, to McCree. It sort of has to do with the other ultimate change, the general one that applies to all heroes. And I mean, in esports, for example, we see a lot of McCrees just have their ultimate all the time, and maybe this will be the big change, that people will be just more careful with their ultimates, but they will also be punished a lot harder for messing up a Deadeye.
Now on to Mercy, who has been struggling recently. Her Caduceus staff, her healing per second, has been increased by 20%, which is a hell of a lot. And Resurrect, basically the people that you resurrect will be able to move around at 2.25 seconds instead of 3. That's more of a little bit of a quality of life change, but the healing per second increase is very similar to Zenyatta when he was struggling, so I don't necessarily think it's going to be a hard fix. It's just something to boost her up a little bit whilst she's struggling. Again, we're going to keep a very close eye on this one, because this might be major and might skip us by completely like it did in the last patch.
And now on to another support, Lucio. Amp It Up has been changed, and the boosting of movement speed has been decreased by 30%. So it used to be a 100% increase, and now it's a 70% increase. And I did see a comparison video of this, and it really doesn't mean that much for just boosting in a short distance. But if you're using it to, like, you know, you maybe quickly have to get somewhere, it will make the difference if it's a long distance. And you know, sometimes you just have to be there in the sort of heat of the moment to prevent something from happening or saving someone. And maybe that will just not happen anymore, but either way, Lucy is still very strong for engaging and disengaging.
Our penultimate hero that we are going over today is Roadhog. It's more of a quality of life change than a buff or a nerf, but it's basically to do with the chain hook. If the hook target isn't in Roadhog's line of sight when he's pulling the hook back, they will be moved to where they were originally hooked. Basically means that you can't grab somebody from behind a corner and drag them along the wall or whatever, because this can weirdly place where you end up landing as the person that's been hooked. So it's more straightforward for Roadhog players. You get less crazy hooks on the trace that end up behind you, but it also means that you're going to get hooked more by Roadhogs. But with the 60 tick rate servers coming in, it should be less of an issue than it once was in terms of getting hooked around corners.
And last on our list is D.Va, whose defense matrix has been changed. So after being activated, defense matrix will begin regenerating following a 1 second delay, formerly 0.5 seconds. Now, this just adds to the sort of, makes the whole rhythm of playing D.Va just a little bit more difficult. And I think it's a good change overall. It's not a big nerf or like a big change really overall, but it's enough to make her feel I guess more fair overall, really. She was dominating in control after the last patch for a while, and maybe this is just enough to bring her back that little bit.
It's definitely worth adding that a lot of these changes may not make it through to the live game. There were some changes in the PTR last time that didn't make it through, so expect this to be very similar. Do let us know what changes you don't think will get through, and also let us know what kind of hero changes that you really like in this PTR patch and what ones that you don't like. We've gone for a less scripted video today and more just discussion-y, so if this is something that you like and want to see more of, then do press the like button and just let us know in the comments as well. Your feedback is definitely appreciated, and we're always listening. Thanks again for watching, take care, we'll see you next time.